George R.R. Martin, autor de la saga Juego de Tronos, platicó con la prensa a través de una videoconferencia en la pasada FIL Guadalajara sobre el lanzamiento de sus novelas en Latinoamérica y la serie de televisión de HBO.
Oh, I love my readers. I'm, my fans. There is in the United States, and I think in Spain and Latin America as well, there's science fiction and fantasy fans are very intense. They have their own conventions, and they publish their own magazines, and, I began as a fan. My first stories were published when I was just a little kid in fanzines, the little amateur comic book stories. And I've been going to conventions since 1971. I attended my first science fiction convention to meet my readers. I think this is something that's unique for science fiction and fantasy writers, that we have an opportunity to actually meet the people who are reading our books and to hear what they think of them and to interact with them and to get their thoughts on it, whether they be good or bad. Which is not true in a lot of other genres or mainstream, where you write a book and it's published, but you're sort of working in isolation. It goes out there, it sells well, it sells poorly, but you're never quite sure who's reading it or what they think of it. But it's a unique privilege. So does it get tiring sometimes, especially when you get late? Yes, it does. Which all of this had happened to me when I was 35 instead of now. I get energy from the fans. I mean, meeting so many of them at one of the big signings and hearing what they do, they're terrific. I have the best fans and the best readers in the world. Well, that's certainly a challenge, and that's something that HBO and David and Dan are going to have to deal with. I think the second season we have 10 hours again. I wish we had 12 because the second book is a little bigger than the first book. But I think it will stay pretty close to the book. But as we get further in, as we hit the third book and then the fourth and fifth books, the third book is a monster. It's 500 pages longer than the second book. It can't possibly be done in 10 seasons, so they're 10 episodes, not faithfully. So they're either going to have to make a very deep cut when they reach the third season, or they're going to have to break the book up and do it in 2 seasons, which of course is my preferred choice. We get 20 hours out of the third book, and maybe another 20 hours, another 2 seasons out of the fourth and fifth books. And frankly, I need the time because they're producing these shows a lot faster than I'm writing the new books. I'm a relatively slow and painstaking writer, so I have to keep ahead of them here. I don't want them catching up with me. But one of the challenges that, there are a number of challenges. The budget and the shooting schedule is one that all these characters keep coming in. The canvas keeps broadening and broadening, and that always means adding new cast members, and actors expect to be paid, so that puts a certain strain on the budget, particularly if you get some really top-rate people to do them. And then if you cut things, the books are curiously structured, where a character can start out being a very minor character in one book, and then in a book later or 2 books later becomes very important. So if you cut that character in the first book to save a little money, you say, oh, we don't need him, we'll eliminate that character. Then you find yourself in trouble when you reach the third book, because you cut the character who was going to become important. And that's where I try to liaison with David Benioff and Dan Weiss, the showrunners and the writer-producers on the show, to warn them when issues like that arise, of what I call the butterfly effect, after that famous Ray Bradbury short story, The Sound of Thunder, where a man steps on a butterfly and changes all of history. So little things can have huge effects. Well, I'm thrilled that they're finally getting out in Latin America. you know, during all the years that the books have been coming out in Spain, Gigamesh had Latin American rights as well to them. And so a few copies were trickling over across the ocean. But Gigamesh was a small publisher, although it grew bigger as the series went on. And I know they always had problems getting the kind of distribution and reviews and the other things that were necessary. So I do have some readers that have gotten that have read the books and discovered them by one means or another, either the Spanish editions or the English editions. My English editions have, I know, gotten into the hands of some readers in various parts of Latin America and the Caribbean who read English, but a relatively small amount. To have a major Latin American publisher putting it out in countries like Chile and Mexico and Argentina and so forth, where perhaps they're largely unknown up to now, is very exciting to me. It's potentially millions of new readers, and I hope they'll enjoy the book and the story and Christina's wonderful translation.